It was hard to open my eyes. I had been in such a deep sleep, but something just didn't feel right. I stretched out my arm to reach for my clock, but instead, I felt a hard stone floor. I opened my eyes and blinked a few times before things came into focus. I sat bolt upright. I was in a bank vault, and I was surrounded by money. Lots of money. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the vault door opening. I looked up and saw a group of policemen standing there.
You're under arrest.
I froze in shock. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, or you may find yourself under arrest too. I looked up and saw a group of policemen standing there. I froze. But hold up. You're probably wondering how I got to this point. Well, I need to start from the beginning for this all to make sense. Let's go back to where it all began. I grew up in a typical middle-class family. My dad was a teacher and my mom stayed at home and looked after me. But one day, things all changed. My mom disappeared without a trace. No one knew what happened to her. One day, she left to get some groceries, but she didn't come back. Days went by with no sign of her. Before long, the days had turned into weeks, and the weeks had turned into years. Eventually, she was presumed dead. No body was ever found, though. I think that was the most difficult part. I always felt like there was an empty hole in my heart because I couldn't get closure. I'm not really sure how I managed to get through high school, but somehow I did. I graduated and then I went to college. I was so happy to start at college. It was a fresh start, something to focus on instead of always thinking about my mom. I had been at college for about 2 weeks and finally finding my feet. It had taken me a while to settle in, but now I was feeling confident. I had just finished my morning lectures and was on my way to the canteen when something stopped me in my tracks. Walking towards me was the cutest boy I had ever laid eyes on. As he went past me, I stole a quick glance at him out of the corner of my eye. He had obviously noticed me looking because he gave me a wink and smiled, his eyes lighting up at the same time. I hurried off to the canteen before he could see my blushes. After that, I saw him everywhere around college. He was always surrounded by a group of girls hanging on his every word. I knew that I didn't stand a chance of getting a date with him. He could get any girl he wanted. No way was he going to choose me. But I was wrong. One day, the unexpected happened. I was sitting on my own in the canteen when he came over and introduced himself to me.
Hi, I'm Timothy. It's Julia, isn't it?
I nodded. He knows my name. That's gotta be good, hasn't it?
Look, I have something I want to give you.
He handed me a letter.
Don't read it now. Wait until after classes are finished.
I put the letter into my bag and watched as he walked away. I wonder what that's all about. As soon as my last class had finished, I pulled out the letter and began to read it.
Dear Julia, even though we don't really know each other, I have really strong feelings for you. I hope that you feel the same way too. Would you like to go out on a date with me?
My heart was literally soaring, and I felt like I was on cloud 9. I stuffed the letter back into my bag and ran out of the college building. I could see Timothy standing outside the gates. Is he waiting for me?
Hi, Julia. Did you read the letter?
Yeah, I did. And the answer is yes. I would love to go on a date with you. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We spent all of our free time together, and it wasn't long before Timothy wanted to move to the next level.
Julia, I'm not interested in any other girls. I want us to be exclusive.
I couldn't believe what he was saying. It was as if all my dreams had come true. I want that too. You are the only one for me.
So does that mean you'll be my girlfriend?
Absolutely. Timothy put his arms around me and gave me a big hug. I had never felt so happy in my life. Everything was exactly the way I wanted it to be. It was at times like these that I really wished my mom was here. She would have loved Timothy. After we both graduated from college, we decided to move in together. It didn't take us long to find an apartment that we both loved. I had been really lucky. The first job I had applied for, they hired me. I was going to be working as an assistant manager of a magazine company. It was a dream job. I couldn't believe how lucky I was. But unfortunately, things didn't go quite as well for Timothy. He had graduated as a fashion designer, but nobody wanted to hire him. I felt really bad for him when time after time he received the rejection email.
I just don't know what I'm doing wrong. Why won't someone give me a chance?
You'll get something soon. I'm convinced of it. But Timothy just got more and more depressed. He had interview after interview, but he never got offered a job. I tried not to talk about my job when I was around him, because the odd times that I did mention it, he just seemed to clam up. He wasn't his usual cheerful self anymore either. Most of the time, he just moped around the apartment, feeling sorry for himself. Which is why it came as a surprise when he told me that he wanted us to go out for dinner with his friends.
We deserve a night out, Julia, and I want you to meet all of my friends.
That sounds great, Timothy. I can't wait to meet them. It was nice to see him looking happy about something for a change. Timothy arranged for us to go out with them the following Saturday night. I bought a new dress and spent hours on my hair and makeup. I really wanted to make a good impression. But when we got to the restaurant, I was surprised to see who his friends were. They all looked like thugs and didn't seem to be the kind of people Timothy would be friends with. I really didn't enjoy the evening at all. Everything any of them said was always really mean. They spoke badly to the waitress and complained about everything from the food to the decor. When we got home, I told Timothy how I felt. I'm just really shocked that you would be friends with people like that. They didn't have one nice thing to say about anybody. They look like real thugs, too.
You shouldn't be so judgmental, Julia. I thought you were better than that.
I did feel bad when Timothy said that, so I agreed to give them a second chance. You're right, maybe we just got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you organize another night out with them? Maybe things will go better next time. The following week, we arranged to meet with them at the restaurant again. I was working, so I told Timothy that I would meet him there. When I arrived, I saw his friends sitting at the bar. Hi there! Has Timothy not arrived yet?
No, he said he's running a bit late. We're just having a drink whilst we wait for him.
I waited to see if anyone would ask me if I wanted a drink, but they just chatted to each other and ignored me. I got myself a glass of lemonade and sat down with them. They didn't seem to notice I was there and just carried on with their conversation.
I'm just fed up with not having any money.
Me too. We really need to do something about it.
You're right. It's time to take matters into our own hands. We should rob a bank.
I couldn't believe they were actually seriously discussing the possibility of robbing a bank. You can't do that, that's wrong. But they just laughed at my words. I decided I wouldn't say anymore. When Timothy finally arrived, I couldn't contain myself anymore. You won't believe what your friends are planning to do. They are going to rob a bank. Timothy looked at me. He had an odd expression on his face.
Stop freaking out, Julia. There's no way they were talking about that.
Timothy went to the bathroom, leaving me alone with his friends.
Don't you dare tell anyone what you've heard tonight, or you'll live to regret it.
You can't threaten me. I can do whatever I want. I will tell the police what you're planning. They all looked at me with a weird smirk on their faces. You won't be awake enough to tell the police. I felt so confused. What do they mean I won't be awake enough? Suddenly, I began to feel really drowsy, and I couldn't keep my eyes open. The next thing I knew, everything went black. It was hard to open my eyes. I had been in such a deep sleep, but something just didn't feel right. I stretched out my arm to reach for my clock, but instead, I felt a hard stone floor. I opened my eyes and blinked a few times before things came into focus. I sat bolt upright. I was in a bank vault, and I was surrounded by money. Lots of money. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the vault door opening. I looked up and saw a group of policemen standing there.
You're under arrest.
The police led me out of the vault and took me straight to the police station. I was taken into an interrogation room where two police hurled a barrage of questions at me.
Just tell us who else is in your gang. Give us some names.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know how I ended up in that vault. You have to believe me. They went on and on, but I kept on denying everything. I'm sorry. The only thing I know is a group of thugs said they were planning to rob a bank. I told the police all about Timothy's friends and what they had said at the restaurant, but they thought I was lying.
Come on, we know that's not the truth. Just admit what you've done.
Please, call Timothy. He will tell you what I'm saying is true. He can back me up. But the police couldn't seem to reach him. He wasn't at home and he wasn't answering his phone. Where is he? I was starting to get a bit worried by then. The thought did cross my mind that Timothy could be involved too. Just when I was about to give up the hope of ever getting out of the police station, someone knocked on the door of the interrogation room. Excuse me, Sergeant. We have the footage from the CCTV cameras now. He handed over a tape and the policeman began to play it.
Well, it seems like you were telling the truth after all.
I looked at the screen. It showed me being carried into the vault by 5 people in disguise. I tried to see if any of the people looked like Timothy. One of them definitely seemed to have a smaller body shape to him, but I couldn't be sure. I didn't say anything to the police about my suspicions, though. Does this mean I'm free to go?
It certainly does.
I left the police station and went straight home. When I got there, I went into the living room and sat down on the couch. What is going on? Is Timothy involved in this? Suddenly, I heard a noise from outside. My heart started racing and adrenaline surged through my body. I looked around for something to use as a weapon. In the corner of a room was Timothy's baseball bat. I picked it up and was just about to go outside when Timothy walked through the room door. Timothy, what's going on? You owe me an explanation. What have you got me caught up in?
I'm sorry, Julia. I should have been honest with you before.
Timothy began to explain it all.
I'm an undercover cop. After I graduated from college, I got an offer from the local police to work undercover for them, so I agreed. The money was too good to refuse. I had no idea that you would get dragged into this and get hurt. Please forgive me.
I was shocked at first, but then I gave in. Of course, I forgive you. What you are doing is really a good thing. These criminals have to be stopped. I was mostly just glad that he wasn't one of the criminals.
Oh, don't worry. They're all in custody now. They're not going to be able to do anything else to you.
I ran over to him and gave him a big hug. It felt good to have his arms around me. But just when I had finally started to relax, I heard an almighty crash. The door flew open and the room filled with people wearing black clothing and full face masks. Ah! But as soon as the scream left my lips, I froze in shock. One of the people had taken off their mask. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was my mom. "Darling, get away from Timothy," she yelled. I was frozen. What's going on? Want to know what happens next? Get this video to 30,000 likes and we'll post part 2. Trust me, things get real spicy.
I walked up the familiar pathway of my parents' house and knocked on the door. A few seconds later, the door opened.
Who are you?
I'm your daughter.
What? We don't have a daughter.
But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell or you may end up in a new universe. I have such fond memories of my school days. I never seemed to have a care in the world. I found school quite easy and sailed through all of my exams. I had lots of friends and my social life was hectic. But the best thing about school was the day I met Edward. Edward is the love of my life. I remember the first time I saw him walking down the school corridor towards me. My heart literally skipped about 10 beats and butterflies danced in my stomach. He smiled at me and I smiled back. Oh my God, does he like me? Did he feel it too? That instant spark? I was starting to believe in love at first sight. But then he was suddenly surrounded by a group of girls and they were all giggling at something he had said. I frowned. Of course he's not going to want to go on a date with me. Why would he when he obviously has his pick of the girls? I turned and began to walk off, but as I did, I heard my name.
Hey, Trisha.
I turned around. It was Edward. How did he know my name? Had he asked those girls for my name? Hi.
I was wondering if you would maybe wanna, hang out sometime?
I was shocked beyond belief. Talk about cutting it to the chase. This guy didn't lie. Yeah, of course.
Great.
When Edward turned away, I could see the other girls staring at me. Their faces were a mixture of envy and hatred, especially from Patricia. She had never liked me from the first day we met. I had seen the way she looked at Edward. It was obvious that she liked him too. I put the girls out of my mind as I walked along the street with Edward later that evening. We didn't stop chatting all the way to the cafe. And when Edward walked me home after, I wasn't at all surprised that he asked,
Trisha, do you want to hang out this weekend? I've had so much fun chatting with you.
Yes, that sounds like a great idea.
There's a movie that I've been waiting to see. I'll get a couple of tickets.
I was hoping that Edward might kiss me when he said goodbye, but he just waved.
See you at school tomorrow.
The weekend came and I met Edward at the cinema. Edward had bought tickets for the back row. That had to be a good sign. I knew that all the young couples wanted to sit in the back row. The movie started and it wasn't long before I felt Edward's arm go around my shoulders. My heart started beating so fast, I felt sure he would be able to hear it. I could hardly concentrate on the movie. I was so excited and nervous. When the movie finished, we left the cinema and walked home. Edward kept his arm around me all the way. We were about 10 meters from my house when Edward suddenly stopped and turned to me.
Trisha, I really like you.
I like you too, Edward.
No, I mean really. I want you to be my girlfriend.
I couldn't believe my ears. All my dreams had come true. I would love to be your girlfriend. Edward bent down and kissed me on the lips. The moment couldn't have been more perfect. It was as though Cupid's arrow had shot me straight through the heart. Edward and I hardly spent a day apart for the rest of high school. There were times when other girls tried to steal him away from me, but he was always loyal to me. I knew that I could trust him 100%. When we graduated from school, it seemed the obvious step to move in with each other. We loved each other so much and didn't want to spend a moment apart. We found the perfect apartment and made it our home. Now the next chapter came, where we had to start looking for career paths. I applied for a job interview at a pretty big magazine company. I arrived at the office and the receptionist called me over.
They're interviewing someone else at the moment. We won't keep you long.
I knew that it wasn't going to be easy to get this job. There would be loads of great candidates, probably better qualified than I was. I was sitting there trying to look up great answers to the questions I imagined they would ask me, when the door opened and Patricia walked out.
Trisha, what are you doing here?
I've got an interview.
Oh, don't waste your time. They pretty much said that I have got the job.
Luckily, the secretary came to my rescue.
You can go in now.
I stood up and pushed past Patricia. Excuse me, I have my interview now. As I walked into the room, I could hear Patricia talking to the secretary. I wasn't sure what she said, but she was definitely talking about me. She's probably trying to sabotage my chance at this job. The fact that I knew that Patricia would do her best to stop me from getting the job made me even more determined to make a good impression. I sailed through the questions, gave the smartest answers, and asked important questions myself.
Well, you are definitely the best candidate we have seen. I don't think we need to wait any longer. We would like to offer you the job.
That's amazing! Thank you so much. I won't let you down. When I got home, I told Edward the good news, and he was so pleased.
I knew you could do it, babe. I'm so happy for you.
I loved my job, and it kept me really busy. At first, Edward was fine with me being at work all the time, but after a while, he began to get annoyed.
Do you have to work this weekend? We never spend any time together anymore. You're always working.
I'm sorry, I've just got some really important stuff to get done. I'll make it up to you, I promise. My parents were the same. They were always complaining that they never saw me anymore. But I couldn't help it. I was the head manager. Of course I would be busy. The following week was no exception. I had to work later every night. I really could do with an assistant. I spoke to my bosses and they agreed that I could advertise for someone to help me. As I was sifting through the applications, one jumped out at me. It was from Patricia. I sent off an email asking her to come in for an interview the next day. The following morning, I sat in my office and waited for Patricia to arrive. The look on her face when she walked through my office door was a picture. I told her to take a seat and began to ask her some questions. Her answers were good, but there was no way I was giving her the job. At the end of the interview, I told her that we would get back to her, but as she was walking out of the office, I shouted to the receptionist, "Send her a rejection letter. She's not the type that we want working here." Patricia turned around and looked at me, a disappointed look on her face. That will teach her from trying to sabotage my interview. But when I got home and told Edward and my parents what had happened, they weren't very happy.
We are really disappointed in you for behaving that way.
We ended up having a blazing argument. You're just jealous of me because I have such an amazing job.
We're not jealous. We're happy for you, but you're losing sight of what's important in life.
I stormed out of the house. How dare they speak to me like that? I know what's important. I ran behind the house and into the forest. I could hear my parents and Edward shouting to me to come back, but I just ignored them. I hate them. No way am I going back there. I ran further and further into the forest. It was really dark, and then it began to rain heavily. Suddenly, my foot slipped into a hole in the ground and I tripped over. Everything went black. I woke up and looked around me. I was in the hospital. What am I doing here? The door opened and a doctor walked in.
Hello, how are you feeling?
What am I doing here? How did I get here?
Some guy dropped you off here.
I realized that it must have been Edward that brought me here. Where are my parents?
I'm sorry, I have no idea.
I felt a bit upset that neither Edward or my parents cared enough to hang around to make sure I was okay. I guess they're still mad at me. Can I go home now?
We just need to do a couple of checks on you and then you can leave.
As soon as the doctor said I was okay to leave, I left the hospital and went straight to my parents' house. I walked up the pathway and knocked on the door.
Who are you?
I'm your daughter.
What? We don't have a daughter.
What?
We have a son.
My parents saw the look of shock on my face.
You'd better come in.
They took me into the lounge. On the sofa was a boy who looked exactly like me. We had the same hair color, the same eyes. He was my double, except he was a boy.
This is our son, Tristan.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Can I see my bedroom, please? My parents agreed to let me look, but when I opened the door, my room was different. All of my things had been replaced and the room had been transformed into a boy's room. There were no pictures of me anymore. Instead, there were pictures of Tristan. None of this made any sense. I knew that I had to get out of there and find Edward. He would know who I was. I made my excuses and left as soon as I could. I went straight to find Edward, but when I told him what had happened at my parents' house, he looked at me strangely.
I'm sorry, do I know you?
What is going on? Now Edward doesn't know who I am either. I pushed past him and into the apartment, but when I got inside, I got the shock of my life. Patricia was coming out of the shower. We both spoke at the same time.
What are you doing here?
I watched as Patricia reached out and held Edward's hand.
Who is this stranger, babe?
Babe! My head felt like it was going to explode. As I looked around the apartment, it began to get even worse. There were photos of Patricia doing my job. There were posters and awards given to her for her work as head of the magazine. Rage began to build up inside of me. I lunged at Patricia and started punching her and kicking her. Get your hands off my man! I grabbed hold of her hair and scratched at her face. Suddenly, I felt Edward pulling me away from her.
Look, I don't know who you are, but you need to leave, now.
I was distraught. I had no choice but to leave, or they might call the police. I began to wander the streets aimlessly. This is crazy. What is happening? How can it be possible that my own parents and my boyfriend don't know who I am? I walked along the streets, tears rolling down my eyes. Have I traveled to a new universe, like Alice in Wonderland? She fell down a rabbit hole and wound up in a parallel universe. Maybe I was never born in this universe. That's why my parents don't recognize me. And that's why Edward is dating someone else. But seriously? Patricia, of all people? It's the only explanation. That's why Patricia got the job and not me. I walked and walked until eventually I could walk no further. I saw a sign. It said psychic. Maybe I should go in for a reading. I might get some answers. I went inside. Is it possible to get a reading now, please? The psychic nodded. She began to look into a crystal ball.
You are lost. But if you wish to return to where you belong, you must go back to where it all began.
When I heard her words, it gave me hope. I knew what I had to do. I needed to go back to the forest and find that hole that I fell down. I ran back to my parents' house and entered the forest behind it. I walked along the route that I had taken that fateful night. It wasn't long before I saw the hole ahead of me. Now, all I need to do is trip in the hole again and everything will be all right. I jumped into the hole as deeply as I could and tripped over. I felt the crack of my ankle and blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I expected to be in the hospital bed, back in my own reality. But instead, I was still in the hole. It was nighttime and all I could see was the starry sky above me. I was starving and it looked like my ankle was broken. Oh God, I'm gonna die here. No one knows where I am. I wished that I could see my parents and Edward. I missed them so much. I never should have said all of those mean things to them. I would do anything to see them again. Even Patricia's face would be a welcome sight right now. I spoke too soon. Patricia's face appeared through the hole.
Trisha, oh my God, are you okay?
Then Edward's face appeared, followed closely by my parents. They helped me out of the hole and took me to the hospital. The doctors told me that my ankle was broken and I had a concussion too. I must be back in my own universe. It worked. I explained to Edward and my parents how I had traveled to a new universe when I fell down the hole. But as I told my story, they all looked at each other weirdly.
Well, about that.
Edward told me that it had all been a trick.
You didn't travel to a universe where you hadn't been born. We, tricked you. Your parents pretended not to know you and I pretended to date Patricia. We photoshopped all the photos around the house.
But what about Tristan?
He's just a paid actor.
And the psychic?
That was just bad luck. We never wanted you to fall down the hole again. You could have broken your neck. We just wanted to teach you a lesson, make you realize what you were missing out on.
And Patricia, what about you?
I'll never say no to pull in a few tricks on you. It was fun.
I felt angry at first, but then I realized they were right. I was getting too caught up in work. I apologized and gave everyone a hug, well, except for Patricia. She just cleared her throat and left the room.
I opened my eyes and blinked. The glare from the bright lights above me blinded me for a few seconds. I looked around me, wondering where I could be. It took a while before I realized where I was. I was in a hospital room. I could hear the beeping of a machine that I was wired up to. The last thing I remembered was waving goodbye to my mom and dad as they dropped me off at the bus station. But before I go on, stop right there. You, yes, you. Subscribe to the channel right now and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our awesome stories. Alright, back to the video. I pressed the call button on the table next to my bed. A few seconds later, a doctor and 2 nurses came into the room. "How are you feeling?" asked the doctor. "I'm okay, I think," I said. "Are you up to seeing your family?" Yes, definitely." The doctor went outside. A few minutes later, he came back in, but instead of bringing my family, he brought some strangers. "Where are my family?" The doctor looked at me. "Marcus, this is your family. Don't you recognize them?" "That's not my mom and dad. I don't know these people." "Marcus, we are your family," the man said. "You have been in a coma for 6 months." The man went on to tell me that I had been going to visit my grandparents, but the bus that I was traveling on crashed and overturned. I was lucky to escape with my life. I had no idea why they were saying they were my family. I knew what my parents looked like, and it certainly wasn't this couple. I knew I had to get out of the hospital and find my real family. Could you please get me something to drink? I just need a bit of time by myself to process all this." "Of course, Marcus. Come on, darling, let's go to the cafeteria," said the woman. As soon as the couple left the room, I jumped out of bed. I ripped the wires out of my arm and ran out of the room. I had to get out of the hospital. I ran down the corridor looking for a way out, but every time I turned a corner, it just led to more rooms. I was starting to panic. I knew it wouldn't be long before someone realized I was missing. I finally saw the exit doors ahead of me, but just before I got to them, an alarm sounded and the shutters came down. There was no way I could get out now. It wasn't long before I was surrounded by doctors and nurses. "Where are you going? You're not well. You must come back to your room." I had no choice but to do as they said. When I got back there, the man and woman were waiting for me. "Why did you run away, Marcus?" "I know you're not my parents. I need to find my family." "Look, we will show you some photos. Maybe then you'll believe us." The woman opened her bag and took out a handful of photos. They were all photos of me at various stages of my childhood, and in each one, I was with the man and the woman. "Now do you believe us?" asked the man. I nodded and sat back down on the bed. It was obviously true. They were my parents, but who were the people in my memories then? It was about a week later when the doctors finally said I was allowed to go home. I watched out of the car window as we drove the familiar streets. When I got to my house, I recognized it straight away. It felt good to be home. I went up to my room. All my things were exactly as I remembered them. Everything was just as it should be, except I still had these strange, niggling doubts. I had memories of being in this house, but my parents looked different in my memories. The doctor had told me that this sometimes happens when someone has been in a coma. He hoped that one day my memory would be normal again, but some people never get it back. I was excited to go back to school. I couldn't wait to see all my friends again. As I walked into the playground on my first morning back, I was immediately surrounded by all of my friends. "How have you been? I can't believe you were in a coma for 6 months. That's crazy," said Nick, my best friend. "I know, it's mad, isn't it?" I said, "but I'm back now. You need to tell me everything that I've missed." Nick filled me in on what had been going on while I was in the hospital. "Marcus, I've missed hanging out with you. I know, why don't I come over to your house this weekend? We can play computer games and watch movies just like we used to." "That sounds like a great plan, but I better check with my parents first. I'll let you know tomorrow." When I got home from school, I went to ask my mom if I could invite Nick over on the weekend. "Oh no, I don't think that's a good idea, Marcus. You really need some more time to recover from your accident." I was disappointed, but I knew Mom was only doing what she thought was best for me. When I told Nick that my mom had said no, he was disappointed too. "What? I can't believe it," said Nick. "Your parents always let me spend time at your house." "I know, they're just being a bit weird after my accident. I guess they're just being overprotective." "I know. I'll ask my mom if I can go into town on Saturday. We could meet up for a pizza or something." "Okay, sounds like a plan." Mom said it was okay for me to go into town, so on Saturday morning, I set off bright and early. I wasn't meeting Nick until 11 o'clock, but I wanted to look around the shops for a bit first. I was looking in the window at some new sneakers when I suddenly saw the reflection of a woman. My heart dropped. I turned around and called out to her, "Mom!" The woman turned and looked at me, but then she ran off down the street. I crossed the road and ran after her, calling out as I went, "Mom, please stop. I just want to talk to you." But she just kept on running. She turned a corner into an alleyway, but when I got to the corner and went around, I couldn't see her anymore. Where could she have gone? I thought. The alley was empty. I felt so confused. In my memories from before my coma, she was the woman who I recognized as my mother. Not the strangers back home, but they showed me pictures of me as a kid with them. So they had to be my parents, right? Then who was the couple in my memories? Who was my real family? I didn't tell my parents about the woman. I knew they would probably be annoyed with me. There was definitely something going on, and I was going to find out what it was. The next morning, my parents went out early. As soon as I heard the car drive off, I went into their room. I began looking through drawers and cupboards, but I couldn't find anything. Suddenly, I spotted a key dangling on a piece of string inside Mom's cupboard. I took it out. I wondered if it would open the drawer in my dad's office that was always kept locked. Well, there was only one way to find out. I went downstairs and into Dad's office. I put the key in the lock and turned it. I heard the click as the key unlocked the drawer. Nervously, I pulled the drawer open. What I saw inside shocked me. There was a huge stack of photos, the same photos that they had shown me when I was in the hospital. Except this time, the photos were of me and the family that I remembered. They had obviously taken them and photoshopped their own faces to replace my real family. When they came home, I was sitting in the lounge waiting for them. I had the photos in my hand. As soon as they came in, they could see that something was wrong. "Marcus, what have you got there?" asked Dad, or the man who claimed to be my dad. "I know what you've done. You photoshopped these to convince me that you are my family. Where are my real parents?" They had no choice but to admit what they had done. "Look, you're right, we did, but you have to trust us. It was for your own good. Everything will be okay." "Okay, I trust you," I said, but I was lying. I didn't trust them at all, but I didn't want them to know. I had to find out where my real parents were. The next morning, I got up at the crack of dawn and left the house. I'd written them a note and put it on the kitchen table. "I'm going to find my real parents. I have to know the truth," it said. I went to the area where I had seen my mom. I started knocking on all the house doors, showing people the photos of my parents and asking if anyone had seen them around. But no one had. I spent hours and hours asking everyone until finally I had no more energy left. I went back to the motel room that I had rented. I would get a good night's sleep and then start again the following morning. But when I got to the room, I saw a note had been pushed under the door. "Meet us at the park tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Love, Mom and Dad." My heart jumped with joy. They wanted to see me. I was so excited I could hardly sleep that night. The next morning, I set off for the park. I thought they would already be there when I arrived, but I looked around and couldn't see anyone. I had been there less than a minute when someone grabbed me from behind. I tried to break free from them, but they were too strong. They bundled me into a car and drove off. "Where are you taking me? Who are you?" "Just keep quiet and you'll be okay," the man said. The car stopped and the two men got out. They pulled me out of the car and took me into a derelict building. "Have you got my parents? They wrote me a note. I was supposed to meet them in the park." "It wasn't your parents that left the note. It was us," said the man. My face fell in shock. "Why would you do that?" "Because your parents are undercover agents. They're looking for us, so we kidnapped you to use as a ransom." "What are you talking about? My parents aren't secret agents." The man took out his phone and called a number. "We have your son. Give up looking for us or we will hurt him and you will never see him again." "Mom, Dad, help me!" I screamed. The man cut off the call. "Be quiet or you will regret it." I didn't say another word. I was shaking with fear. I had no idea how this was all going to end. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash. Someone had kicked the door in. Within seconds, the room had filled with policemen. "You're under arrest. Put your hands in the air." Once the police had got the handcuffs on the two men, they called out, "It's safe. You can come in now." "Marcus!" I looked up. "Mom! Dad!" My mom came running over and put her arms around me. "Are you okay?" I nodded, tears running down my eyes. "I'm so happy to see you," I cried. "How did you find me?" Dad told me that when the two men had called them, the police had been able to trace the phone call. It hadn't taken them long to find the building I was being held captive in. "I'm sorry we had to do this to you," said Dad. He began to explain exactly what had happened. They told me that it was true that they were secret agents. After my accident, they had gone undercover on a very important mission for the government. "When you came out of your coma, we were at a critical moment. We couldn't come to see you because our true identities would be revealed. We asked two other agents to go to the hospital and convince you that they were your parents." I was shocked at what they told me. "I'm so sorry I came looking for you. I hope I haven't ruined everything," I said. Actually, you've done us a big favor. If you hadn't gone looking for us, showing our photos to everyone in the area, the two men would never have known you were our son. They couldn't resist the temptation to kidnap you and try to use you against us. But their plan backfired. Now they will be going to prison for a very long time. Does that mean you'll be coming home? I asked. Yes, it does, said Mom, smiling. The three of us drove home together. When we got there, my fake mom and dad were sitting waiting for us. I'm sorry I didn't trust you, I told them. Now I know that you were just taking care of me until my real parents were able to come home. You don't need to apologize. We're just happy that you're safe and back with your real family now. Oh, and I'm sorry we didn't let you bring Nick home. We just couldn't risk him seeing us and telling you that we weren't your real parents. What did you think about that story? Crazy, right?